So welcome to this video, which is Introduction to the Research Process. And this video is based on two readings which we'd encourage you to obtain from your library or university library and read through. Unfortunately, we weren't able to make these readings widely available to you because of copyright purposes. So what I did was I read the readings, and then I'm giving you my interpretation of what the readings are about. But I do encourage you to go out and find the readings yourself and read them in more depth. So Crotty, who is the first person that we're citing here in the Foundations of Social Research, poses 4 types of questions that you have to think about before you embark even on a research project. You have to think about what methods do we propose we're going to use, what methodology governs our choice of methods, and what is our theoretical perspective, and what epistemology informs our perspective. So these are big, kind of high-level questions you have to ask yourself before you even start off. And when we get to the last slide, I'll show you how that actually plays out in the type of methods you decide upon. So the first question was regarding your methods. So your method is the technique or the procedure that you will use to gather and analyze data that's related to your research question or your hypothesis. And this is what you're doing. So you have to be able to describe what you're going to be doing in your proposal as specifically as possible. So you have to, I always tell people it's a bit like writing it for your mother or your father or your sister or your brother or somebody who's not engaged in doing research. You have to be as very specific as you can. So for example, if you're conducting an interview, what type of interview? Will it be phone? Will it be in person? What setting? Is it in a prison? Is it in a school? What techniques are you going to use? Is it going to be paper and pencil? Is it going to be an online interview? What sort of things will you be doing? Will you be audio recording? And then you also have to talk about the analysis that you're going to do. So you have to be getting very, very specific. What format is the data going to be? Is it paper and pencil, or is it an online survey? Is it phone-in things? What is it? Is it audio tapes? And then what statistical models are you going to use? So the next one is methodology. So methodology is the process or the design that underlines the particular methods that you've chosen, and it links your methods or what you're actually doing to your outcomes. And so this will include a description and the rationale. And this is particularly true in qualitative research, that you have to describe your rationale for why you're choosing this methodology, because you wanted to get to these outcomes. So you'll learn more about this in the qualitative modules later on in the course, but you'll hear terms like ethnography and phenomenology and grounded theory and narrative inquiry and discourse analysis. And qualitative researchers and people who review research proposals are very, very interested to know that you understand why you're choosing a particular methodology to govern your methods that will actually then get to your desired outcomes. So I can't stress it enough for writing qualitative research proposals. The third question is the theoretical perspective. And this is your philosophical stance. And in some ways, I think your philosophical stance is almost driven by your personality. But I didn't get that from the reading. That's just my take on it. It kind of gives you the context for the research logic and the criteria that you use. And it allows you, as the researcher, to identify and justify the assumptions that you're going to take in your study. So there's 3 sort of common theoretical perspectives that are talked about in research. One is positivism, and positivism has the stance that true knowledge really can only come from verifiable scientific inferences. So some people tend to find positivism much more resonant with who they are as people. there's another theoretical perspective that is interpretivism. I can't even say it. Interpretivism. And that is that true knowledge really shouldn't be subjected to scientific inferences. It's outside of the scientific inferences. And then postmodernism is knowledge is socially constructed. So these are some of the sort of theoretical perspectives that will actually guide research logic and criteria and the context for these. And particularly, again, if you're looking at qualitative research, you should be aware of these theoretical perspectives and what's sort of guiding you in your selection of methods. And then the last element that Crotty talks about in the readings is epistemology. And this is concerned with providing a philosophical grounding for deciding what types of knowledge are possible and how we can ensure that they're both adequate and they're both legitimate. And so objectivism is that objective truth exists independently of humans, and that meaning and meaningful reality is apart from any operation of consciousness. So constructionism, is that all knowledge and meaning is really contingent upon the interplay between the object and the subject, so that no objective truth actually exists, that people construct meanings in different ways. And this is frequently used by qualitative researchers when they're looking at the interactions between human beings and the way that meaning and knowledge is generated. And then subjectivism is that an object makes no contribution to the generation of meaning, and that meaning is imposed on the object by the subject. So those are some of the kind of language that, if you're thinking in terms of qualitative research in particular, you should be familiar with some of the epistemology that is surrounding it. So this brings me to my last slide, where I mentioned at the beginning that I would show an example. So for example, if you're interested in finding the preferred method of booking appointments for a large clinic, you might say, well, I want to be objective, that's my epistemology and my personality, and therefore I'm a positivism is my theoretical framework. Therefore I want to do an experimental design, so I'm going to design a survey, and I'm going to then have a questionnaire with statistical analysis to try and figure out what the preferred method of booking appointments for a large clinic is. Or you might say, no, actually, I want to construct how knowledge is generated in the social context. And I'm a postmodern at heart, and that's my theoretical understanding. So I'm actually going to design an ethnographic study where I'm going to sit as an observer, like an anthropologist in this clinic, and I'm going to observe what goes on, and I'm going to take copious field notes. I might even talk to some people and chat to them and find out, but that's how I'm going to find out. So you can see how you can look at the same example of research topic, but you can actually approach it in different ways. And you could argue that both of these ways of knowing, both of these ways of constructing the research process will both give very, very important data that actually will be complementary. So that's the final slide for this presentation. Thank you.